grateful to be here and to be given the wonderful opportunity to meet some new people to discuss these issues with and to discuss them with some of the people who were here last year. We're, as always, experimenting with ideas and formats. Yesterday was a bit of an experiment with the debate format, which I enjoyed tremendously. I loved the drama of it, I really did. I thought that that really facilitated a kind of memory and engagement with the ideas. Now today we have a different kind of drama and a different kind of format. And as I understand it, this is how we're planning it to go. We will have a wonderful paper. Then we will have two respondents who will specifically respond to the paper. The presenter will have an opportunity to respond to those respondents. Then we will have a genre of discussion among permanent respondents who may or may not respond to the paper or the special respondents specifically. We hope they might mention these things occasionally. But they may also bring up any other strands of the wider discussions we've been having to bring into this. So, with this in mind, I'd like to introduce Winnifred Sullivan. Winnifred Sullivan is a lawyer and a professor of religious studies at the State University of New York. She is the author of The Impossibility of Religious Freedom, and as I heard her describe her interest to someone in a taxi, I think it was 2 days ago, her focus is the phenomenology of religion in the context of, in contemporary legal contexts. The phenomenology of religion in contemporary legal contexts. Winnifred.
Thank you, Naomi, and thank you, Balu, very much for this invitation. I'm really delighted to be here and have already learned a tremendous amount. It's always fun to talk about the things that one talks about usually with one's usual colleagues in a new context and see how they're heard, how they play, in what ways they make sense and don't make sense in new contexts. So I'm very pleased to be invited. Thank you. I'm also delighted to be in Delhi. I've long thought that India and the US share much with respect to the structure of the public discourse about religion and, of course, the legal structure, the regulation of religion. And I am deepening my understanding of the similarities and differences and understanding the ways in which I perhaps misunderstood those before. So my remarks today will focus on one very specific US setting. I tend to work very close to the ground in very small frame kinds of settings in which to consider these larger issues. So that's what I'll do today again. So one US setting in which the problem of religious proselytization arises with the hope that the facts of this case study will provide an occasion for a larger comparative conversation about the difficulty of talking about religion and rights, and whether the two can fit together in the same politics. In the conference brochure, the problem of the contemporary politics of religious conversion in India is described as a conflict between two versions of religious freedom, or perhaps two versions of religion. One version understands the appropriate legal response to conflicts over proselytization as being defined by the right of the proselytizer to exercise his right to religious freedom. On this view, proselytization is viewed as a religious practice reaching beyond an existing religious community to solicit new members, a practice that these members then claim as being protected by laws guaranteeing religious freedom. The other version understands the appropriate legal response to conflicts over proselytization as lying in the right of the target not to be disturbed or coerced in the practice of his religion. So on this view, the protected religious practice consists in the ongoing maintenance of the integrity of the individual in the context of a coherent religious community. Now, the first version, as I understand it, is commonly associated today in India with secularists, and the second with what are sometimes called fundamentalists. So putting aside for a moment the questions that might be posed to this description of the problem in the Indian context, what is immediately striking to a scholar of US religion is the way in which these positions seem to be reversed in the US context. Although, as I have said, there are many parallels between the two, the rhetorical structure of the current debate about religious freedom and conversion in the US is different. In US politics, the first version, religious freedom understood as guaranteeing the right to proselytize, is popularly associated with those termed fundamentalists. That is, those who are alleged to be trying aggressively to invade the neutral secular public space and re-sacralize it. While the second, religious freedom as protecting the target of conversion efforts, is associated with secularists, who are then in turn alleged to be trying to establish secular humanism. Proponents of more space for proselytization in the US context see religion as a free market, while opponents see religion as a threat to individual autonomy. In other words, in contrast to India, I think, proselytizers in the US are defended by self-appointed guardians of religion, while they are attacked by self-appointed guardians of the secular state. Now, I have not named the actual religious communities here, but of course it is Christians, mainly in each case, who seek political protection for proselytization. But this stark dichotomy pitting so-called religious fundamentalists in the US against so-called secularists is complicated, I think, by a number of political and cultural assumptions that are important to get on the table. First, the distinctive US commitment to free speech absolutism, which is distinctive in relation to Europe as well as in relation to India, is an absolutism. That is, that free speech is believed by almost all US actors to be an absolute position, that there should be almost no restrictions on free speech, with the exception, the conventional exception that you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater. But except for that kind of case in which your speech is going to instantly produce violence, you should be able to say anything you want in almost any context. And this is something that's shared by all US actors, religious and secular. And this historic commitment is particularly evident in the legal success of Jehovah's Witnesses in the United States in establishing their right to proselytize. Second, in the US, the de facto establishment, if you want, or naturalization of Protestant anthropology, an anthropology or understanding of the human person in which both the so-called Protestant ethic and voluntarism in religious matters are unproblematically assumed by all, secular and religious. This means that change is a socially valued aspect of being human. Whoever you are, you need to work on yourself and make yourself a better person, including choosing and claiming in religious matters. And I would say that this is a position that's shared right across the political spectrum in the US. Third, the framing context is not that of colonialism so much, but that of the Christian-Jewish polemical discourse. And this last, in its most extreme version, positions supersessionist efforts to convert the Jews as an extension of the Holocaust. Hence, the Jewish alignment with the secularists in the division I've made. And finally, the religious-secular divide in the US is softened, I think, by the fact that religion is understood by most Americans, including most secularists, although that term doesn't completely fit in the US context, to consist in the propagation of a benign, universal, golden rule kind of religion that's shared across all traditions. So that for many Americans, it does not matter very much what religion you are, as long as your religion is, as the mid-20th century sociologist Will Herberg said, the American way of life. And that's the religion of America.